Hello, my name is Katie. I am the editor-in-chief of the Cauldron student newspaper here on CSU's campus. I'm a senior journalism student. At the Cauldron, we have 5 separate sections that come out bi-weekly. We have news, sports, arts and entertainment, opinion, and features.
Hi, my name is Arbella, and I am the editor-in-chief of the Vindicator magazine here at CSU. We are the arts and culture magazine here at Cleveland State, and we also have 4 sections. We have features, arts, culture, and social issues, as well as a 6-page cover story. We come out every month.
So there are a couple of main differences between working for a newspaper and working for a magazine, and mostly the differences are in the writing. So with a newspaper, it is usually third person, and you're not talking about yourself. You have multiple sources to make sure that you know what you're saying is correct, and you are trying to be as ethical as you possibly can and as unbiased as you possibly can. And with a magazine, you are allowed to have your opinion. Mm-hmm. You can be first person, and you have a little bit more room to be creative in your writing. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the main differences that we have between the two.
And for example, with us, with the Vindicator, we kind of encourage our writers that with every piece they write, they kind of have their own perspective and their own opinion pretty much. We do have more kind of new, like leaning towards news type articles, but most of them are very kind of like personal reflections and things that also tie in with kind of other sources and other additional research, but kind of come from a place of their personal perspective. And we mostly use soft leads for almost all our articles, kind of like to hook in the writer or the reader. And that's definitely a big difference.
For a newspaper, especially the Cauldron specifically, the only part of our newspaper that you can have an opinion is the opinion section. Mm-hmm. Every other section of our newspaper should be unbiased.
Mm-hmm. And for the Cauldron specifically, you mostly focus on kind of CSU and kind of the surrounding area of CSU, so kind of Cleveland, whereas we kind of allow our writers also to write about kind of various issues and their takes on that. So it's good to have those two kind of like focuses and kind of with different mediums. And then there's also difference with layout. Mm-hmm. So with our layout, we kind of have a separate design team that are kind of more have like their own creative freedom to kind of make the layouts more fluid, involving illustration and stuff. So it's kind of almost as big of a part as creating the content for the magazine.
Mm-hmm. And for the Cauldron, the emphasis is on the content. We have a very traditional newspaper style in the way that we lay out, and we don't have our own design team. We have our editors, our section editors, who actually lay out their sections for our layout. And we do have a graphic designer on hand to make our graphics and to help us with our pictures and to make sure that our layout is as perfect as possible. But we think that it's very important to have and give that skill of doing an actual layout and learning InDesign. We think that's very important because it's a skill that you can use when you leave.
Mm-hmm. Especially if you want to go into newspaper.
Of course, yeah.
And you guys obviously come out more frequently. So we have kind of a little bit more time because we come out once per month, and because of that, and that is partly because we give nearly 2 weeks for the art team to put everything together. That's why we kind of have a little more time, and that's why we're able to come out once a month.
For the Cauldron, we're bi-weekly. We come out every 2 weeks. So that may seem like a lot of time, but it's actually really to the wire almost all of the time. We have to make sure that all of our stories are newsworthy and continue to be something that people want to read and aren't out of date by the time that we go to print and we actually are on the stands for people to read. So we have to be very conscious of that when we're pitching our stories a week in and when we're interviewing for our stories. And most of them, as Arbella has said, do focus on CSU. So if there's not much going on at CSU, then it's harder for us to pull together an issue that's engaging.
A lot of our stories kind of are newsworthy too, but it gets a little more difficult because we have to kind of plan a month in advance and think about what's relevant, what's going to be going on next month. So you kind of almost have to really plan ahead when it comes to writing kind of current event based stories. So a lot of writers also choose to just write about general issues, like a lot of magazines have themes for certain issues. Like February is our Black History issue, March is usually our Women's History issue. Those themes kind of help guide the writers as well.
Yeah, for the Cauldron, we don't have themes for our issues. We try to, if there is a big event or something that is arguably more important happening around the campus, we try to have something talking about it in news or an entire feature based on that issue, and then have a perspective in our opinion section so that we are having a flow within the issue.
So we're about to wrap up the semester, and we've done 3 issues, and our 3rd issue, the December issue, is about to come out. I think that one is probably going to be my favorite because our cover is focusing on LGBTQ representation in the media. That's our cover story. And we are talking, in the cover story, we talk about kind of different ways, kind of like the national issue of how LGBTQ people are represented in the media, but we also localize it in a way that we interviewed 4 students from Cleveland State, and also talked about their perspective about how they're represented as LGBTQ students and how they felt about the whole flyer situation that happened a couple weeks ago. So I'm really excited for that issue because we really did a good job of localizing it and talking about national issues, which we try to do with almost all our cover stories. So
yeah, for the Cauldron, we are about to go to layout this Sunday for our last issue, which is our 7th issue of the semester. Out of all that we have done, and we've done some fantastic reporting this semester, and I'm really proud of my team, the thing that really comes to mind is the flyer situation, is the 5-page feature that we did on the flyers and the president's response, and really going in depth with what happened and what we can do and what has been done. Our feature editor was working on it, our managing editor was working on it, and me, the editor-in-chief, was working on it. So we had 3 really good reporters all covering what was happening, and the end result was something that I think this entire organization was really proud of, and I know that a lot of the professors in the journalism department gave us some really great feedback.
And I think that's just a good example about how kind of 2 of our issues almost kind of go hand in hand. Like we both covered things in different styles and different ways, but we kind of realized that this was a very big issue that was relevant to CSU, relative to a community, in Cleveland and nationally. So I think that was really cool how we both kind of noticed like this needs to be covered in multiple ways.
Yeah, and I think that it's really good that we had those 2 perspectives as well. We had the newspaper perspective where we're talking about the issues and we're talking about what's happened. And then we have the magazine perspective talking about a little bit more broadly and talking about it with an art style, with a culture style. And getting those 2 perspectives hand in hand with each other, I think was really, really interesting to see because it's not about covering the same thing, it's about how you cover it.
So I've been part of the Vindicator since my sophomore year, and I've also written a couple pieces for the Cauldron, and now I'm part of the Cleveland State Capstone. So, I've had multiple different experiences through student media. I've found my personal favorite medium and the medium that I want to most likely pursue in the field of journalism, which is magazine writing or magazine editing. So that has been extremely helpful to do that student media experience and have it complement the classes and courses that I'm taking with the journalism department. And I feel like that's kind of why it was so important to me. And I've heard from many other people who have had the same experience within my staff and who have graduated and have gone on to work in the field. So it really helps to have that real world experience through student media and find the right kind for you and dabble in different types.
Yeah, I think for me personally, student media is very important in finding the style that I want to go into in the field of journalism. And it also really made me realize that there's only so much that you can learn in a classroom. And there's some things that you have to learn while doing, and that's one of the biggest hurdles that you have to really bridge while first working in the field of journalism. But once you have those down, I think that, especially if you have them down while in college, that really gives you an edge once you get out of college and once you try and really get into that field in the quote-unquote real world. Student media is extremely important to the growth of a journalism student. And then we don't even just have the Vindicator and the Cauldron. We have so many student media opportunities at Cleveland State specifically. We have the Vindy, we have the Cauldron, we have the Gavel, which is the law school's newspaper.
And then Whiskey Island, which is the literary journal. And those two are really good examples of kind of, the literary journal kind of has a lot of more, creative writing, like poetry, stuff like that. And some people, I think, submit to it as a hobby, but some are looking to get published in the future. And for the Gavel, it's kind of the law school newspaper, and they focus purely on law topics. And same thing with that. I mean, there's a multitude of different kinds of people who are going into different fields within law that are writing for that. So it's a good experience either way, even if you aren't a journalism major. So it kind of really gives you a really good real world experience, learning about deadlines, and being able to be creative. And
I think even if you aren't a journalism student, even if you don't want to get into a field where you will be writing, having the skill of writing and knowing how to write will only benefit you.